Hi there, and welcome to the Callosum interview series, Beyond Revenue, Bringing Purpose to Brand. This is where conversations grounded in purpose give insights to the outdoor industry. Thanks for joining us today. So, good morning. How are you today, Sensei?
I'm doing fabulous.
Great, welcome. So, before we begin this morning, I'd love to frame our conversation so that our audience knows where we're coming from and how the conversation might unfold. So, purpose driven companies go beyond the role of offering a product or a service to develop programs that have social or environmental impact. Social entrepreneurship is bringing more meaning to what businesses do, and it is exciting to explore if one wants to make a difference in their career and in their company. Collison believes in the quadruple bottom line, which can be expressed as profit, people, planet, and purpose. So today we have Sensi Graves. So I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Let's pause there for a moment.
Sensi Graves. Yeah, you got it right.
Sensi, I got it right. Okay, Sensi. Lovely. So Sensi is a professional kiteboarder, confidence expert, and empowerment speaker. She's also founder of Sensi Graves Swimwear, a sustainable swimwear line for active women. She helps people to feel that they're enough now by sharing the story of becoming a pro kiteboarder and starting a business before she believed that she could. When not traveling for photo shoots or speaking gigs, Sensi runs women's kiteboarding retreats and camps and mentors confidence and business. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. Me as well. We've known each other from afar for quite some time. Crossed paths at outdoor retailer, at trade shows.
Mhm.
I own your bikinis, and so it's great to reconnect several years later as I've watched from afar the evolution of your business and your personal brand. So
Yeah,
there are many ways to define purpose. It's not a new concept, but it's having a resurgence based on the pandemic and based on Black Lives Matters. So
mhm.
the consumer is insisting that businesses play a role in culture and in our global crises. So how do you define purpose in your own words?
I define purpose as the intention with which you do something, the why behind what you do.
Okay, great, great. And so in my research, I extracted a few things that sounded like purpose to me from your
Mm.
from your own words or your marketing channels out there. And I'm curious if this is in alignment with it. On your personal website, you listed dedicated to spreading joy and empowering women everywhere to believe in themselves.
Mm. Yes.
Yes, tell me more.
Yes. So, as you point out in my intro, I didn't believe in myself. I still battle with not believing in myself. I started a swimwear brand when I was 23 years old, and I became a pro kiteboarder in that same time period, shortly after early 20s. But if I'm being honest, I didn't believe I could do it. And it's amazing that I got to where I am today without believing in myself, right? But I struggled with feelings of self doubt, with lack of confidence, with really the entire struggle of being a human. I kind of let overtake me, and it really was pushing this big boulder up a hill when I understand now that it could have been so much easier. I could have taken so much of the pressure off myself. I was the only one that was making it mean more about me when I bumped up against failures, or I didn't place well in a competition, or I had a struggle in my swimmer company. And I've learned over time that we're the only ones that can feel proud of ourselves. And so in my personal work, I really believe that that's how we're going to change the world. When people feel proud of themselves, feel like they're worthy now, they naturally shine their light. They naturally feel like they can make an impact, make a difference. And they believe in their capability to share their message. And so the work that I'm really passionate about, my purpose now is always with that undercurrent of how can I make people feel good about themselves so that they can go out and be awesome and share their unique gifts with the world.
Wonderful. Love that. And in the now is what I'm hearing, like in the present. I
Mm,
was raised of like always prove. It's not, don't step until it's perfect. It has to be, everything has to be, checked off before you're allowed to speak even. And so this sounds to me like always progress, never perfection, to embrace
yes.
the progress.
Oh my gosh, that's such a common story, Claire, that people have. I'll do it when it's perfect. Perfection is a total myth. It's never going to be perfect. And so there's a lot of different reasons for doing stuff now, but one of them that I believe fully is that no matter where you're at in your life, you are impactful right where you're at. And that's like what I like to tell everybody because it's not until we take ownership of where we are that we can really step fully once again into believing in ourselves and believe that we can influence other people because you can. If you think about walking down the street and someone's walking towards you and they have a massive smile on their face and they just shine it in your direction, what are you going to do? You're going to smile back, right? That person impacted you from across the street. You can impact everyone in your day to day. And so you hit the nail on the head there with taking ownership now, right where you're at. And okay, I have the capability. I can impact. I am influential just as I am. I don't need to get all the accolades and accomplishments and get to the next level or grow my business to $1 billion.
Mhm,
That
mhm,
might not happen. And that's okay because once I take ownership from where I am, that's when I can really show up, play full out, and have the impact, influence, and be a driving force in the world.
mhm. Wonderful. And I think it's also, I think the same thing of that smile of I call it the ripple effect. Uh,
Mm,
I learned that once an individual values themselves, they realize the ripples that happen around. Someone that does not value themselves doesn't realize that whether they like it or not, they will impact others. For example, if you stay out too late, you get to work late the next day, how many ripples are there that you may or may not be aware of? The meeting starts late, you push the next meeting, someone misses their lunch date, can't pick their kid up from school, compared to I'm going to show up in integrity and know that my word, my spot and smile as I cross someone ripples out equally over the course of the day. Does that
oh
make
my
sense?
gosh, yes, that's so good. And I like what you said, whether you like it or not, you're impacting other people. And so when people take ownership of that, it does a number of things. Number one, it raises your responsibility for yourself. You said it yourself. Show up with integrity. If you're like, people are depending on me, people are looking at me, you're gonna show up in a different way because you're like, I bet I have to do this. I'm here to serve other people. Um, and number two, it makes you once again more confident in yourself because you know, oh, I'm impactful right where I'm at. My worthiness is naturally raised. And this is all stuff that I worked on for the last decade because I saw how much I was holding myself back. And we all do that. It's being human, right? We all have the
Mhm.
limiting beliefs to work through and the myths of perfection to overcome. And that's why it's that journey, there's never that destination. And that's why the other part of it is spreading joy and having as much fun as possible because why the heck not, right?
Right. Yes. Absolutely. Great. Great. And so then I know you didn't, when you started your business in 2012, you didn't start with that dedication to spreading joy. You have found it along the way. At what point did you fold it into your business purpose, which I read as empowering women on and off the water?
Mm,
Is that your
yes.
purpose statement, or how would you define your business purpose statement?
Yes, that still rings true in the business purpose statement. I would also enfold into that in the most environmentally sustainable way possible. And I believe that businesses have immense impact, right? That kind of makes sense. And the more that you can take ownership as a business and understand that people are looking at you, the more that you can shift consumer direction, consumer behavior. And so the second piece is that environmental piece. Oh, we are influential as a business and our purpose is to empower women to feel good about themselves and also to change consumer behavior to be more environmentally friendly and take ownership of that as a brand.
Mm.
That those both evolved over time. When I first launched my swimwear company, to be honest, I almost didn't launch it because I didn't want to make just another product. I didn't want to manufacture. I was like, is this how I'm going to impact the world? Does the world really need another swimwear company?
Mhm.
And that, which the answer could be no. But then I read Yvon Chouinard's Let My People Go Surfing. And I've always been a huge Patagonia follower. Grew up wearing Patagonia, have some really old pieces of my mom from the 80s. And I've always admired their business direction, their purpose, their why for being. And we've seen how much of an impact they've had on the planet. And I said, okay, if I can follow in their footsteps and do something similar where we're taking ownership of what we're doing, we're manufacturing in the right way, and we're spreading that consumer awareness, then this is something I should do. This is that why that I can gravitate towards. The why of we need another bikini wasn't strong enough. And
Mhm.
that's why, we talk so much about why it's important to have a purpose as a business because it drives your actions and helps keep you motivated because we know on the journey of life and business there are going to be a lot of ups and downs.
Mhm.
And so to bring it back around, that purpose piece was in there from the beginning as far as environmentalism. And I knew that I wanted a product that made women feel good in their bodies. But certainly, as you said, it's evolved over time. And the real nugget of helping people feel worthy came later once I found my own worthiness.
Mhm. Okay, got it. So and I'll point out that you manufacture in the US and your suits are made of 100% recycled materials, correct?
Well, it's
Verify for me.
80%, 20% Spanx so far as we have found. And if anyone, this is why I call it crowdsourcing our way to environmental success. We don't know everything. It's not perfect by any means. Spandex right now can't be recycled. So it's 20% spandex, which is virgin, and then 80% recycled material. So technically, no, I want to correct that.
Okay, okay. Well, and that is actually a very hot topic right now in my world is that many leaders don't want to speak to say we're doing it right if it's not perfect. I'm like, there's no such thing as perfect. So we tell the story to position that you are making an effort, many are not. And
Yes,
any efforts that you're making is progress. And it is not about the human individual, it's not about you. It is about the impact that you're creating by creating product that makes a difference. And so I battle continually around the nervousness of sharing the stories that it might land incorrectly or they might be held accountable, that it's not exactly, you're not an exact certified B Corp or Yvonne. Like, hey, we're like you're the next Yvonne. And let's keep working at this together because tides rise together. So from everything I know about your line, it is kicking ass in terms of being sustainable. Yeah. So tell me,
thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Tell me how you got to the place of saying you want to manufacture in the US. What are some of the challenges? And in terms of you used recycled materials. Tell me a little bit more of the story.
Yeah. So we've always been made in the US. That was a big factor in starting the brand. I was like, okay, I want to do this as environmentally minded as possible. Can I make a truly sustainable company? No. Like even now, what does sustainability mean? I think that's a lot in the greenwashing, and that's what we're talking about. It's progress. Even the word sustainable. I'm like, well, that would mean that it's everlasting. It's it's going to be used again. Right now, our swimwear can't be used again. It's used once. Maybe people can recycle it some way, but most of the time they're probably going to throw it away. So is that sustainable? No. But the processes that we put into place can be built on over time. And that was my mentality with launching. I was like, okay, at that time, so it's a decade ago, there weren't that many sustainable fibers and everything was huge minimums. And I honestly couldn't afford it. I was like, okay, I can't even use sustainable fabric. What can I do right now? We can be manufactured in the US. We can use all recycled hang tags. We can use no plastic packaging. There's a lot that we can start with.
Mhm.
Progress over perfection. And then a couple years in, we were able to transition to all recycled fabric. Those are the real heroes in my mind, the companies that make these recycled fabrics, where they go collect plastic bottles, chip, cut them up into little chips, extrude them into fibers, and make that into fabric. That's incredible technology. Those
Mhm.
guys are the real heroes in my mind. But that's what we utilize in the swimwear now. And then we also, there's a bunch of cool programs that you can enter in as business. And this has all just been, I see an opportunity to do something better. And I say, okay, we have the resources, it's available, we can do it. Let's take a step towards that. For instance, becoming climate neutral. There's um, a number of brands and companies that have launched to do that now, where you can offset your carbon that you produce, where you do all kinds of complicated calculations and offset all of your carbon. It's just amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it is phenomenal, the technology that has evolved to allow us to do those things. I have a colleague, I don't know if you're familiar with Robin Hall of Town Hall. It's a kid sustainable brand, new out of Steamboat, or 2 year, it's a year old, 2 years old. And she is about kids, community, and sustainability. And she has, I should say, she has two partners. I just am most connected to Robin. And she has a 17-point sustainability checklist. She comes from a backstory of working for Smartwool, who was
Mm,
equally committed to that. And so it's really the sky is the limit, and it's always phenomenal and always evolving. And it sounds like you have the right attitude of what can we learn, who can we speak to, and who can we partner with, and who can we champion to just continue to make progress as we move along the way.
exactly. And I want to point out one more thing there, Claire. We talked about this a bit, is that transparency piece and saying, we don't know what we don't know.
Mhm.
Help us. You know, for instance, right now, our bra cups in our line, I'm pretty proud of everything in the line. And I'm like, okay, we're doing a great job. And our bra cups that we use are not recycled. That's one component that I've been looking for. That I'm like, okay, can we please find a solution for this? So I asked the community, I say, hey, this is what we're doing. Our sustainability practices now. If you have a solution, please share it with us so that once again, we can crowdsource our way to success, because we're all in this together. And it creates
Mhm.
that, I hate to use the word authenticity because I feel like it's a little bit overused these days, but it has that vulnerability that makes it authentic and open with your customer, and more of a dialogue um, to grow together.
Absolutely. That is, I believe that's the magic to growth, is vulnerability. And it can, you can take being humble, and it's not about all the accolades that you've collected. It's about the impact that you're making, telling the story. And transparency is a huge component to build relationships. It's, I'm willing to ask, and I think, but that's can be a personality thing. I think of that. I'm one of four siblings, and we have different opinions on. I share failures on purpose because I believe that it leads as an example for others to step in and say, me too. But I have a sibling that is like, why would you do that? Don't do that. That's like showing your weakness. I'm like, for you, it is. It's not for me. For me, it's a badge of honor to say I'm
Mm,
learning through this, and I'm allowing others to learn through that. So, there are many ways of leading. But I believe that I believe that the transparency is a real opportunity to engage with your buyers, and then
truth.
continue to move from transaction to transformation, because they then
Yeah.
become part of the story with you. And that's the fourth phase of integrating purpose, is when you're not running the company, your buyers are. They are telling you where to go and what to move towards, instead of just checking the box to say we're going to start with using recycled, we're going to start with a living wage. It pulls its way where you are pulling in people instead of pushing your product on people. So the
Mm,
calling in of the consumer is based on transparency and thoughtful integrity in the way you lead, that brings the consumer in, and then they feel welcomed in that space, so they can ask for their needs, and they can help you. So
So good.
awesome. Awesome. So excuse me. Uh, Tell me in your decade of I'm watching your story go from when you first took your first kiteboarding lesson in the Outer Banks, which I love, by the way, to becoming a coach, to moving, or not west. You took a lesson there, but you've always been Hood River. What are some pivotal moments for you in the decade? You can integrate business, personal. What sticks out to you?
Yes, such a good question. It's so interesting to allow ourselves that time to look back. And in looking back, that brings up the first pivotal moment, which was when I finally felt proud of myself of all the work I'd done. And it was at the end of 2019. And because 2020 was coming, and we're like, okay, new decade, yay,
Uh,
exciting. And
okay.
I'm part of an accountability group that every year we do this reflection retreat and look at the prior year because it was 20 coming into 2020. We were looking at the prior 10 years. And so doing all of this work and pulling out old journals and looking through social media and making lists of everything I had done in the past 10 years, all the accomplishments, all the places I traveled, everything I had put out into the world, how I'd grown personally, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember being in the retreat with all of this spread out in front of me, and the leader was asking some poignant journaling questions. And I just had this upwelling of emotion, and I burst out into tears, and I had to leave the room, and I cried for like 20 minutes because in that moment, it just struck me like a pang in my heart. I was like, "Phew, wow, I am actually really proud of myself and the woman that I've become in this past decade." And the reason that I was so emotional is because I knew in that moment that I had never let myself feel proud of myself before. And I was like, wow, this poor little girl, this poor 23-year-old,
Yeah.
poor 25-year-old, poor 28-year-old that has been trying her hardest,
Mm,
that's putting her heart out there, that's built this brand, that has traveled around the world, that's living this really shiny life that looks pretty badass. She just hasn't let herself feel proud of herself. And I understood in that moment that we are the only ones that can feel proud of us. And it doesn't matter what level you get to, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter how many Instagram followers you have. It is only when we can look at ourselves and say, oh, wow, I'm doing a great job. And that's a consistent practice. That was one of the biggest pivotal moments for me.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Congratulations. It's a little bittersweet because you realize you lived all those years not acknowledging that, and to
Yeah.
finally have it be like, I have arrived. Acknowledge to yourself, I have arrived. It's really wonderful.
Yeah. And it's consistent work,
Mhm.
consistent practice into being like, okay, we are enough. I'm doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that, with the swimwear company, there have been so many pivotal moments, even just putting the brand out there. I remember I'm in Maui right now. I was in Maui when I launched my swimwear brand. We were living here for a winter. And I remember all the suits showed up at my house, our rental house, and they're in these boxes, and I'm pulling them out. I'm getting them ready for my website. And I would go to the Haiku post office, wrap them in a little bit of tissue paper, put a heart sticker on them, and ship them off to the customers. And then when we left Maui to go back to the mainland, I had in my kite bags all of the bikinis, and I was like flying to the airport carrying the bikinis. And of course, that was a pivotal moment because it was the first time I was putting myself out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember it wasn't until a few years later that I really kind of took ownership of what I was doing because the story of doubt was cascading along this whole time. So my swimmer company started just as Sensi. I wanted to be like Chanel, Roxy, just Sensi. So I called it Sensi Bikinis. Turns out, I didn't do my due diligence. There's a sandal company called Sensi. They're based out of Italy, but they have all the trademarks in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's my name. I didn't even look it up. I knew nothing. Let's be real. I knew nothing what I was doing. And about 2 years into business, they called me and they were like, "Hey, you can't use this." And I was like, "What? Oh no!" But they said I could use Graves, and so I had to shift the name to Sensi Graves Swim.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me become the face of the brand. I never wanted to be the face of the brand. I was like, I want it. My name's great. I'm going to use it. No one else is using it. Wrong. And that's going to, I'm going to be able to hide behind that facade. But when I had to change the name, it made me have to, be like, who's Sensi Graves? And I had to step into that ownership. And that has helped, obviously, my career, but more my inner confidence and that acknowledgement, oh, I'm impactful right where I'm at, and willing to show up even when it looks messy and it's not perfect and I'm just doing the best that I can, which we all are, right?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, great. I imagine that was pretty surreal walking through the airport with a bag of your brand. You're out there.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
so funny.
And so tell me about just the first couple years of learning and researching, and you've got your hands full. You're a pro, you're teaching workshops. Were you doing all of that at that time?
Oh no,
Okay.
oh no. In the first couple of years, to tell the truth, I didn't have my sights set on being a pro kiteboarder. Excuse me. When I first launched my swimwear brand, I was working as a kiteboarding instructor, and because I was in the water every single day, and I was tired of the swimwear on the market, I was like, I need something that makes me feel empowered, makes me feel good in my body, doesn't look really frumpy, fashion oriented, but really works and is really performance oriented. And so I said, okay, well, I don't see it, so I'm going to make it myself. Let's figure out how to do this. I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't think I'm going to be a pro kiteboarder. And it just so happened that, it really was like I was in the right place at the right time. I was coaching in North Carolina on the Outer Banks. And at that time, that was a huge mecca for park riding. Do you know what that is in kiteboarding? We have sliders, just like you do snowboarding, sliders and features in the
Yeah.
water floating, park riding. And so we had one of the only slider parks in the world in North Carolina. And there was a big contest that happened out there every year. So I was surrounded, I was in this environment. And so I started hitting the features and started riding with everyone. And there were not that many women doing it at the time. And I quickly got good enough where people, my then boyfriend at the time, was encouraging me. He's like, you should start competing. And I was like, no, no, absolutely not. I do not want to. I'm not good enough. The doubt showing up. I've only been kiteboarding for a short time. Like, what do you mean I shouldn't start competing? That doesn't even, I don't want to do that at
On your
all.
radar at all.
It was all on my radar, but it was more like, okay, I'm here. There's only a couple other girls. I have the skill set. I should do it simply to push the sport forward, simply to participate and grow women's fighting. And so I started competing and started traveling around doing that. And shortly thereafter, got sponsors. And then as my kite career grew, so did the swimwear company, and they both supported one another and really gave me credibility as a swimwear company to show that I was an athlete, and vice versa. It really gave the swimwear credibility, or gave myself as an athlete credibility, because I had something else that was a platform that was sharing women in sports.
Okay.
And so it ended up being obviously really great, but it took me a number of years to kind of accept, okay, I'm good enough to kiteboard. I'm good enough to show up and compete. That inner critic, that inner confidence growing again. And then also that, oh, I could do both, because it was I'd be at kite competitions answering customer service emails. And a lot of me was like, maybe I should focus on one thing and then I would be better at it instead of spreading myself between two big missions.
Mhm. How do you feel like you moved out of the startup mode? And I'm curious
Hmm.
to know too, did you consider yourself seasonal, or were your sales global to the point where Southern Hemisphere was buying when Northern was done? So two questions. How did you
Certainly.
move out of startup, and did you ever consider yourself a seasonal business?
Yeah, I'll answer the second one first. I never consider myself a seasonal business, because we go into production and then we start shipping retailer orders. Certainly, sales will slow down. Honestly, September, October, November are the slowest times of the year in swim, but we would be doing production. And so I would be still completely wrapped up in it. So it didn't feel seasonal, even if our sales
Busy,
were
yeah.
slower, right? It's still, you're doing stuff all the time.
Mhm.
So no. And then moving out of startup, I hired an intern, and that allowed me to delegate, learn that a bit,
Mhm.
and start letting go a little bit of the ownership. So I realized, oh, okay, I need help. Why am I the smartest person in my business? So it was starting to incorporate other people into the business and hand them tasks that allow me to focus on other things and to work in my zone of genius, to work on things that, okay, I'm not good at this actually. Let me get someone else in here to do that. So we still have a very small team, but I think the acknowledgement of you don't need to do everything, you can't do everything, and it's okay to delegate was a huge learning for me.
Okay. I talk about that a lot of the you at some point you need to move from being the doer to the CEO. and
Mhm.
and because the doer is living in current day transaction mode, and the CEO needs to be planning and looking ahead and cultivating. And it's
Mhm.
often the challenge of, do I have a system in place so that not only can I hire someone, but can I train them, so that, and do they have the trust so that they know they can take over for whatever it is that I've delegated to them. So, okay, that's a great one. And I know you've been pretty resourceful in terms of funding. I've seen some of your Kickstarters or Indiegogo. Tell me a little about that.
Funding, always super fun. So we bootstrap for the majority, and that was a control issue. That was like, I was like, I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. I want to be completely responsible. And also it was a belief issue. I didn't have the confidence that someone else would invest in me, in the brand.
Mm.
That's been that huge learning over time. But that held the brand back a lot, for many, many years, that lack of belief. And so in the first couple of years, actually right before launching, I was in New York. We had escaped the hurricane on the outer beaches, and I was staying with one of my friends' the families, and I was just about to launch my swimmer line. Well, actually, it was like a year before. I was like, I have this idea. I want to launch a swimmer line, and I was talking to his dad, who is a wealthy man, and he actually gave me $5,000. He gave me because I was like, I don't. It's $5,000, nothing to buy my first production run. I was making like 12 suits, nothing.
Well,
And
more than nothing.
thank you. You're doing a great job. Um, and I was nervous about that. And he actually gave me like that little bit of seed money to buy my first production run. And so then we were off to the races. And then from there, it was just bootstrapping everything we put back into the business, started making a tiny bit of money. And then when did we do a Kickstarter? I think it was in 2018. We did a Kickstarter to raise money, and raised $35,000 for our community, which was awesome because every year we go into the season of, okay, we've sold the bikinis from the previous year, and now we need to put money up front for our production, which is always a really terrifying time.
Mhm.
And so Kickstarter was great. And then it's been, besides that, credit cards, line of credit, and just trying to stay profitable in the business. Luckily, we've been profitable. We were profitable year one. It's honestly oscillated back and forth, but that is, come to find out years later, that's a feat to be profitable in your first year of business. And so, little Sensi, great job her. But it's been tooth and nail. That's the hardest part, I believe, of running a business, especially manufacturing, is cash flow. And you have to be really careful with keeping cash in the business and learning to reinvest and not having too much money in your inventory. A lot of times we get stuck thinking, gosh, we should be making more product. We could sell it. We're sold out. And we didn't have the cash to do that. So what are some other funding options? So now I'm at the point where I'm like, we should get funding and grow this into the next level. And I've come to believe that we can do it.
Mhm. Well, I'm not familiar with Oregon resources in terms of funding. In Colorado, there are so many, and there's so much um, coming from the government in terms of rural development and opportunities and incubators and so forth.
Hmm.
Have you been part of any accelerators or incubators?
Oh, yeah. Bill Oregon is one. based out of Portland, and then also Starbucks. And then I'm also a part of the Tory Burch Foundation.
Oh, you're a Tory
Um,
Burch Foundation. I had
yes, I'm a
no
tour.
idea.
Yeah, they're amazing. I mean, all three of those programs are phenomenal. I just have the utmost respect and admiration for Tory Burch as a human in general, and the work that she's doing to change the world and empower women is next level.
That recently came on my radar this year. It's very interesting. I've seen.
Yeah, anyone listening to this apply
Okay, awesome.
if you're
So,
a woman.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that piece I asked about seasonality because I hear of, and I know in apparel, I used to work in the apparel industry, is when you have to front the money. And so similarly, I hear some retail shops where they're open only in the summer and then they sort of pray that the money lasts through the winter. But you still have all the assets. So what can you do just because the weather changed? How can you change your mindset to think of yourself as a year-round business? And what, maybe you need to look globally to where the warm weather is. Maybe you need to do something different in your space during that time. So I'm always curious of just, depending on different models, how do you make that move?
I'll speak to one thing that we do, which is pre-orders. And we did that in the Kickstarter. Obviously, Kickstarter is you buy the product before it's ready, but you do this whole storytelling campaign. But now we incorporate pre-orders pretty frequently. If we're sold out of a product and I know we order it with our manufacturer, but it's going to be a month, we'll open it up and say, this is on pre-order now. Or if we have a collection that is in that seasonal time window when we want to just get some sales in, but we don't necessarily want to buy a bunch of product that we don't aren't sure is going to work, or we have a new product that's launching, we'll launch it as a pre-order and do a little campaign around it and then see if it resonates with the customer. So it's a little bit of way of testing and also getting money in before we have to produce.
Mhm. Okay, great. If you could share a tip with a founder or leadership team, what would it be?
Invest in yourself.
Okay.
You are the best investment you can make.
And agreed. And that's pretty tough because guess where that comes out of your profit?
Mm,
When you're
mhm.
creating your budget, do you have a line item for professional development?
That's a great question. I have a savings account for professional development, but it's not a line item in my business. And now I'm going to incorporate that. Great idea.
Well, and
I allocate money mentally, but it's not on the spreadsheet, which it should be.
right. And so that, I find that as well as your team, like that is you spoke of you have this
Yes.
accountability group. Do you do is your team all in person or are they remote or a mix of both? Do you do an annual retreat? Our world has changed in terms of where we can work. And clearly you travel based on your sport. So how do you lead the team, not only yourself investing in yourself, but also in your team?
Yeah, I really believe in tests for introspection and learning as much as possible about yourself. So I have people take the Myers-Briggs test, the Enneagram, love languages so that you know how people want to be appreciated,
Uh-huh.
right? Because everyone shows love differently and
I love
receives
bringing
love
that into
differently.
the workplace. That's fantastic.
Yes, yes. And so doing that to establish a baseline of, okay, how does this person operate? Because each of us is honestly kind of bumbling around being like, how do I operate as a human? And each of us needs unique things. And so the more that we can learn about ourselves and learn about the people that we're working with, the more we can say, oh, okay, actually, this person doesn't work well with being told what to do. They need to have this free time and general idea where we're going and let them take ownership and run with it.
Mhm.
So using that really creates a feeling of trust and we're serving people in the right way.
Great. Great. Okay, so I'm going to start to wrap us up here. These are some of my favorite questions. If you could read the future, where do you see your brand in 20 years?
Ooh, in 20 years. I see it as a community that is honestly more person. I see us moving away from the screens and being so product oriented and being more about incorporating events and women's retreats and some of that personal development work. I would like to see that arm. I have a separate business where I run kite camps and companies, but I would like to see that kind of service more blended into the swimwear and giving tangible tools to empower women to feel good in their bodies and make it more about that interaction, community, and gathering rather than a product. So incorporating that as an arm.
That's lovely. I heard someone sharing a story recently, her personal story around she wasn't willing to take certain risks specific to having a family because she believed that the concept of community is gone.
Mm.
That, do you have how can you count on people around to help each other and to step up? And in this, it was a comparison of parents versus a communal tribe to help raise children, because there's daycare challenges and cost of living challenges and housing challenges and all of that. So it's very applicable for an entrepreneur of how do you step into that space to be, one, a safe place, two, a place for learning, and a place for impact. So that's really great. I can't wait to see how that unfolds. I'll be checking back in a decade or so. And let's peel that layer and say, personally, who are you becoming?
Mm. I'm becoming a I'm becoming a motivational speaker. That's what I'm really passionate about.
Mhm.
But I think I'm more becoming someone that's willing to show the ups and the downs of this journey of being a human. And I'm becoming someone that's willing to step into the spotlight and withstand criticism, because you're going to receive it no matter where you're at, in order to uplift others.
Wonderful. I hear your transparency again and your vulnerability again. That's wonderful. Great. Thank you for sharing that. So I like to wrap up with what I call my rapid fire questions. So you don't know what these are. So these are off the cuff. What was your, from Maui, what was your last outdoor adventure?
Yeah, I was kite surfing and winging yesterday. So it's
Tell
been
us what winging.
really wonderful. Winging is a new wind sport. It's overtaken the wind sport world. You have a wing that you hold. So it's a little bit of a combination between windsurfing and kite surfing. You're riding a foil board, so hydrofoil, and then you hold the wing in your arms. It's a little bit more accessible than kite surfing. Kiting can be intimidating to people. Winging, you don't have the line. You can just let go of the power whenever you want. But you're pulling yourself across the water. And I'm here on Maui this week, and the wave riding is incredible. It's so much fun. It's honestly like bottomless powder turns down the wave.
Awesome. Wonderful. And how about your favorite nonprofit these days?
Oh, I love Columbia River Keepers. So they're local to the Columbia River Gorge,
Okay.
and they do river restoration work and keeping our waters clean. And they do a lot of work with the native population, and they're really connected. And they're incredible.
Well, I'll add that to our resource. I'm not familiar with them. And how about a top of mind book or podcast for your fellow entrepreneurs?
Mm, I have so many books that
Yeah.
I recommend people
You read
read.
one at a time or multiples at the same time?
I read multiples at the same time. Yeah, I kind of get into one, and then I just have so many on my book list and my bookshelf. But then, I also like to read a novel simultaneously with a self-improvement book, so that I have that balance of both.
Mhm.
Um, okay. I'm actually struggling to think of one. The most recent one that was super impactful for me was Rocket Fuel.
Right.
I can't remember the author, but it's about finding a partner in your business,
Mm-hmm.
and the combination of a visionary and an integrator to rocket your business to the next level. And I think it's important to read things like that, because it expands your idea of what's possible in your business and allows you to explore opportunities that you might have missed before.
Mhm.
So, the idea of having a partner wasn't even on my mind. And then reading this book, I was like, oh, wow, actually, this could be a great stepping stone to the next level. And maybe I should incorporate it.
I have not heard of that, so I'm also going to add that to my list. Thank you. Thanks.
Read it.
Okay, so it's been great. Thank you. And I feel a
But
little bit of extra sunshine glow just knowing that you're in Hawaii and out there enjoying the water. So thanks for joining me today. And I'm excited to check back in the months and years to come to watch the evolution. And thank you for the good work that you're doing. It's really great, and I'm thankful for it. In the meantime, please be in touch with us on all the usual marketing channels. You can find us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and of course on our website at gocallosum.com. We sure hope you got outside today.